Yeah.
Carlos like has to eat ramen for the next month.
Yeah.
Well, now we know he's qualified to be on a car podcast.
Yeah,
right?
dude, we love ramen because we are car boys. We love ramen because we buy our car parts instead of vegetables.
Why is your car guy like Vincent D'Onofrio from Men in Black?
Water, sugar, water, more. I went and saw Men in Black with my cousin and my aunt was wearing the same dress as that lady in that scene. She got roasted.
That's awesome. That was my favorite movie as a kid. I mean, it's the first one still holds up.
Hey, you know the difference
well.
between me and you?
About 3 ounces, 4 cars, and 2.
I'll make this look good. Welcome back to the Past Gas Podcast. I'm James Pumphrey, as always, joined by Nolan Sykes.
Hello. I butchered that What's the Difference reference.
And Joe Weber.
Hey, y'all.
Okay. I got a question for you guys. What do you think is the ultimate form of protest against the government?
Unleashing a global pandemic?
Is it a rally?
No.
What about a petition? What about, instead of all those things, you got a group of your buddies together and just drove across the country super duper fast and hoped you didn't get stopped by the cops along the way?
Whoa.
Dude. Yeah, that's probably the ultimate.
Yeah, that's how you affect change.
This is exactly how the Cannonball Run was born. Turns out, the Cannonball Run was more than just Burt Reynolds chewing gum while sprinting across the country with Dom DeLuise and his band of merry men.
Whoa. I thought it was just Burt Reynolds chewing gum with Dom DeLuise.
The original Cannonball Run was a protest against a future that promised to destroy cars and people as we knew them in the 1970s.
The gas crisis?
We'll get there, James. There's a lot of things.
Past Gas Podcast. It's about cars, it's not about forts.
By 1971, the U.S. was starting to feel the culmination of the absolute craziness of the 1960s. The space race had just peaked 2 years earlier with the moon landing in 1969.
Nice.
The battle... Nice, yeah. The battle against Soviet communism had given birth to a culture of fear and paranoia against a backdrop of constant threat of nuclear annihilation and Soviet control. Despite victory in the space race, the Vietnam War was entering its 16th year by 1971, and people were getting tired, afraid, and most of all, they were upset. The continued pointless slaughter in Vietnam helped grow a massive sense of distrust for the government by its citizens.
Don't they call the Vietnam War the American War in Vietnam?
I would imagine so, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, just wanted to get that out there.
Still, though, Richard Nixon was enjoying his time in office, wielding his presidential signature and signing the EPA into foundation. That is the Environmental Protection Agency. The creation of OSHA followed soon after. They're the ones that enforce workplace safety. While these organizations were very beneficial, it created an immediate fear of turning America into a, quote, nanny state.
Yeah, we don't need no protection. If the environment deserves to survive, then it can protect itself, pick itself up by its freaking bootstraps.
You gotta stop pouring bleach into the rivers. You gotta stop freaking hurting yourself at work.
What is
Yeah,
happening?
That's
Yeah,
my
but-
Fran Drescher. That's my nanny, the nanny state.
Fran Drescher in The Nanny.
Yeah, man.
Babe.
Babe.
Real babe.
Yeah.
Mr.
Yeah.
Sheffield, quit pouring the bleach into the rivers.
She's a good-looking woman. Anyway,
That's all the EPA does, right? They just keep you from pouring bleach in the river.
You're making too much smog, Mr. Sheffield.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield, you got the volcanoes going all over the place.
I don't think EPA is trying to shut down volcanoes.
they're putting just giant, like, manhole covers over volcanoes.
Volcano is a broken mountain.
Do-do-doom, doom, doom, doom.
So they got to protect that mountain.
Okay, anyway, the Clean Air Act of 1970.
Boo! We hate
okay.
it. I hate air.
Sometimes called the Muskie Act,
As
after,
in, musky be a nerd.
after the senator who pushed into legislation had one of the most intense impacts on the automotive climate. The Muskie Act required automotive manufacturers to reduce vehicle emissions by at least 90% within the next 5 years.
That's crazy.
a lot.
That's a lot. It takes like 7 to 10 years to develop a car.
Therein lies the rub. These new restrictions were coming at the height of the horsepower wars of the muscle car era and threatened to end muscle cars in the U.S. entirely. At a time when 7.4-liter V8s were found in almost every performance Chevrolet, it was pretty apparent that emissions were not exactly front and center in most consumers' minds. The easiest way to comply to these regulations was to severely strangle the engines by leaning out the air-fuel mixtures or just fitting less powerful engines overall. A proposed 55-mile-an-hour speed limit was also in the works as well, adding insult to injury to many an automotive enthusiast.
The general consensus is that the first muscle car era truly ended in approximately 1971, largely due to such tight restrictions. The Ford Mustang lineup is a perfect example of the new policy's impact. In 1971, the Mustang could be optioned with up to a 7-liter V8 that could produce 375 horsepower. In contrast, 4 years later, in 1975, for those who are following along, the largest engine available in the Mustang was a 5-liter V8 that could barely put down 140 horsepower.
It's a big drop.
Yeah. To put that into perspective, a 2020 Toyota Camry makes 203 horsepower with a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine. That is about 1.45 times the power of the Mustang with an engine that is half the size. While older cars are usually outmatched in modern-day comparisons, it's still shocking when you consider that our basic passenger sedans produced more power, baby, than the performance model of the Mustang at that time.
This is a Wheelhouse episode we're writing right now, and it's pretty shocking just doing research and seeing like these little tiny inline 3s with turbos making like twice the amount of power that a big old V8 back in the day makes. Like, I think the most shocking example is like, I know we talk about PT Cruisers a lot now. At least 2020 is the year of the PT Cruiser.
It really is.
A PT Cruiser GT can beat a 1974 Countach in 0 to 60.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, look, I grew up at drag strips. You know, there's nothing better to me than like a big block V8 just chugging along, just like with a nasty cam. Just sounds like it's gonna fall apart. Yeah.
Oh my god, that V8's nasty. Do you hear this, Mike?
Avery, no. But I think it's super cool that these tiny engines nowadays are making so much power. Like, anybody should be excited about that. Like, they're lighter, more efficient, and with a smaller packaging, you can do more stuff to the car itself to make it handle better. You know, it's really cool.
Yeah. But to top it all off, the book Unsafe at Any Speed was published in 1965 by a young lawyer by the name of Ralph Nader, becoming the best-selling nonfiction book in 1966 alongside Truman Capote's In Cold Blood.
Haven't finished that yet.
Nader's book is famous for exposing blatant safety flaws in automotive design, specifically targeting the Chevy Corvair suspension. The swing axle suspension system, which was identical to the VW Beetle, was defective and could easily lead the drivers losing control of the car and rolling. While with the suspension, he also exposed how faulty hood hinges would break away during an accident, causing the hood to act as a projectile, potentially injuring and even decapitating the vehicle's occupants, and proved that non-collapsible steering racks caused an absurd number of fatalities during accidents by impaling drivers.
Cars used to be so unsafe back in the day.
I made the mistake of watching old crash tests one day.
Yeah.
And it's just like gory.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. Just like cutting dummies' heads off and just like people
really
just,
bad.
If you got in a car accident, you'd just die.
Yeah. You think about like the A, B, and C pillars on like classic cars, you know, like on my Dart, for example, the A pillar is no joke. Like, I can put my finger around it like that, and that's supposed to protect me in a crash. Like, I do want to retrofit it with like roll bars or something, even though it'll be like a cruiser, just for that peace of mind.
Yeah, it's just like the perfect size to break off and go right through your eye hole.
Or everything just turns into like blades and spears.
Like windows, before they use tempered glass, like the pane glass would just break into these giant shards and like cut people's jugulars and all
God.
that in like fender benders. Not good.
Not good. Some might say they're unsafe at any speed. Nader argued that there was a gap between existing design and attainable safety. He said, quote, "There's a gap between existing design and attainable safety."
Vote for me.
And he also said that automotive manufacturers had moral imperatives to make people safer. Nader encouraged whistleblowers to speak out against the automotive industry and to help expose as many glaring faults from companies as possible. His constant political lobbying led to massive reform in automotive design, but many people viewed it as just another excuse to make their fun and sporty machines into bland boxes. Ralph Nader had people fearing for their lives around their vehicles.
I think with good reason. I think he's making a good point. You know?
Yeah. I think it's amazing that he was able to get like a best-selling book that's just like an expose on.
That is pretty gnarly. I mean, they didn't have... I don't even know what a popular book is today.
Now you can buy a bestseller, like a New York Times bestseller. All you have to do is just buy it.
Well, New York Times bestseller list is not dependent on sales.
Yeah, what does a newspaper know about selling books? Am I right?
What is that your thing now? You're just mugging the camera?
Yeah.
No, it's not like so. Like the number one book on the New York Times bestseller list isn't the number one selling book in the country. It's a curated list.
Yeah,
It's
and you
just
buy
like-
into it.
It's like, hey, check these out. Yeah.
And then they'll probably actually become bestsellers by being on that list.
Probably, yeah.
It's good
It's
investment.
it's like the YouTube trending page.
We're going to tear this whole system down. All right. All these events going on at this time culminated in one thing. Rebellion.
Like Star Wars.
In 1971, rebellion is what helped define who you were. The man was out to get you, and you and everyone you knew had to show them who was boss. Let's show the man that let's show my boss that I'm the boss.
Hey, boss, I'm the boss.
There were protests for Vietnam everywhere. Draft cards were being burned, and people were setting themselves on fire even. ROTC buildings were being bombed. The civil rights movement had only just ended in the late 60s after almost 20 years, and gay rights protests were sprouting up, starting with the infamous 1960 protest at the Stonewall Inn in New York City.
1969.
1969, sorry.
Nice.
This is all part of one major movement in America, appropriately named the protest movement. Yeah, it was a time, very tumultuous time. People standing up for.
I wonder what that was like.
Yeah, people standing up
Living
for
in
their
a
rights.
tumultuous time.
Yeah, I don't wish I knew.
I can't imagine what living in a terrifying time would be.
We millennials have it pretty good right now.
Yeah, we've never.
We do have safe cars.
We do have
Yeah.
safe cars, but we should stay in them because the air is poison and there's no health care anywhere.
All right, when it came to fighting automotive restrictions specifically, even Hollywood got involved, helping implant an idea into the nation, the urge to hit the road without consequence. The 1969 hit Easy Rider, starring Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper.
It was Jack Nicholson's first movie role,
Hmm.
and he was amazing in that movie.
Have you ever tried to do?
I've never seen it, actually.
It's great.
Have you ever
It's
tried to
not
do
good.
his
It's okay.
eyebrows?
Hey, that guy's one easy rider.
That's his whole...
It's great.
Easy Rider proved that there was more to just driving around than just the destination. It's all about the journey and the freedom to decide how and when you get there,
Yeah, man.
You ever just get in your car and just drive somewhere?
Yeah,
Thinking
only
about
when
your
I'm
life?
sticking it to the man, though.
Yeah, man. I'm like, you know what? Screw the man. I'm gonna drive all the way to Orange County today.
I actually do want to go out to Palm Springs or something.
Brock Yates was the senior editor of Car and Driver magazine during this time. One day, while sitting and fuming over the new restrictions,
Just sweating.
just like, airbags, seatbelts. He was fuming over the new restrictions being imposed on automobiles, specifically the speed restrictions. He remembered a conversation he had years earlier. His fellow staffer, Steve Smith, had always claimed that the best way to truly test a road car was at high speeds.
Sounds pretty reasonable.
With speed regulations cracking down even further, it looked like that dream would become even less obtainable. So, in order to fall in line with the rest of the protest movement, they decided the best way to protest the new laws was to break a few.
Hell yeah.
They would organize a group of people to use the new interstate system and race from coast to coast to see who would complete it in the best time. People love street racing. Last night I made 2 tweets. One of them was, hey, let's remember all the healthcare workers out there. Like, get big shouts, big respect.
Big shout out to nurses.
Yeah, for sure. That's crazy. I can't imagine that. The other one was, hey, seems like a good time for street racing.
Yeah.
The street racing tweet got exponentially more retweets and more likes.
Now.
So, America, at least our audience, prefers street racing to nurses. Now, this wasn't the first time this idea had been tried. In fact, some other journalists at the time had claimed to set a coast-to-coast record. But those numbers usually stretch the truth a bit.
Oh, no.
Some people had only gone a short distance and then used that as an average for how long the rest of the run would take.
That's not how that works.
No. Others had completed it but didn't count the time they spent at their hotels against their total time.
Again.
Doesn't count. Basically, previous recent records were useless and fake. But there was one person whose numbers could be trusted.
Irwin Cannonball Baker.
Hell yeah.
Was an American motorcycle and car racer right at the turn of the century. Originally, he was a vaudeville performer, doing weird sketches and singing songs.
Yeah, cannonball, my cannonball.
Hey, look at this little guy in a barrel. I got me a little guy and a dog that sings for donuts.
Anyway, he turned to racing after winning a dirt track motorcycle race in 1904 at the age of 22.
Damn, that's old.
Yeah, not bad. Baker was a good racer, but what he was most famous for were his timed continental speed runs. In 1915, he raced from New York to Los Angeles in a Stutz Bearcat in a total of 11 days and 7 hours.
That's a cool car name.
Stutz Bearcat. It's pretty amazing. In 1928, he raced the New York Central 20th Century Limited Elite Train Line from New York to Chicago and won. His speed runs made Cannonball a legend. He would run literally everything from motorcycles to tanks even. People would pay him to try and complete a record in his vehicle, as he held the mantra, no record, no pay. Throughout his career that spanned until his death in 1960, he set 143 total distance records. His greatest drive of all was in 1933. Baker drove his Graham Page Model 57 Blue Streak 8 solo, coast to coast, in 53 hours and 30 minutes. He completed a solo run faster than most people could do with the team today. It was especially impressive because there was no interstate system in 1933, and there weren't that many paved roads either. That is very impressive. It took us 25 hours to drive to Albuquerque with 3 vehicles, so this guy definitely has us beat.
He didn't have a turbo on his car that was just a time bomb.
No, he didn't.
With Baker as his inspiration and the 1971 releases of Two Lane Blacktop and Vanishing Point pushing them over the edge, Brock Yates and Steve Smith decided to create the Cannonball Baker Sea to Shining Sea Memorial Trophy Dash.
Woo!
Trophy Dash.
Easy to remember name.
Yeah, it's super. It's as long as you're under 9 words, it's really easy.
Yeah, that's the rule for the human brain. That also would look really sick on the back of a t-shirt.
They really would.
Trophy dashes were typically short races of about 5 laps, so that part of the name was selected sort of as a joke.
Wink, wink.
The race would be a, quote, balls out, shoot the moon, the establishment rumble from New York to Los Angeles to prove what we have been harping about for years, that good drivers in good automobiles could employ the American interstate system in the same way the Germans were using their autobahns. Truth and justice affirmed by an overtly illegal act, and we have a little guy in a barrel.
This is kind of what
that last part came from.
I mean, people are still kind of talking about this. Like, I saw an article a couple weeks ago kind of arguing that that the I-5 in California should kind of be like an Autobahn,
Yeah.
Like, because, people speed on that thing already. Like, we got to Bakersfield in like an hour and a half because we were going like 95 the whole way, which is pretty awesome.
Gotta get to Bakersfield. Gotta get to
Gotta
the
get out there, man.
Togos before they close.
Bakersfield's got the best Togos.
I don't know. As we'll see, maybe that's not a great idea.
In California, people just speed.
Yeah, unless it's raining.
Unless it's raining, then we go 4.
It was decided that May 3rd, 1971 would be the grand introduction of the first event. The race was introduced for fun as much as it was a protest against the government treating drivers like they were incapable of driving in their best interest. It was announced in Yates's monthly article in Car and Driver magazine. Yates and Smith assumed that as soon as the race was announced, entrants would start flooding through the door. After all, what self-respecting driver would pass up on the chance to do something as crazy as this? Well, it turned out pretty much all of them. The exact opposite of what they wanted happened. Basically, no one applied, and those who did pulled out soon after.
It's like we have actual racetracks that we're racing on. Like we don't have to leave Southern California.
The reality was, when it came down to it, people feared penalty. People feared any punishment from employers, sponsors, or even family members. There really wasn't all that much reward for competing, so why risk it? In the end, Yates's team was comprised of Jim Williams, an artist and future Car and Driver staffer, whom Yates had met at an art show, and Yates's 14-year-old son, Brock Yates Jr.
Are you guys going to name your sons your name?
No.
No.
I want to name my son Evil.
Evil?
With an I?
That's on brand.
EVEL.
Yeah. That's
Probably give.
I want to name my son Evil Dave Pumphrey.
if I have a
So people just always assume that it's a nickname, Evil Dave.
Yeah, there's Evil Dave.
Yeah, Evil Dave Pumphrey, not David. Dave.
That's so sick.
Yeah.
I might do, if I have a son, I've thought about this, either Thomas James Sykes.
Oh, Nolan. Maybe I'll
daughter.
name my son Evil Nolan.
It doesn't quite roll off the tongue. Daughter. We know someone who named their daughter Senna, which
That's
I
a
thought,
cool name.
which is really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of like that.
I want to name my daughter Bullet.
Bullet.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's a good one. Like Bullet, Bullit.
Yeah, like the county in Kentucky. Bullet County.
Bullet.
Cool.
I'm going to name her Bullet County Pumphrey.
The next important step was to figure out what kind of car to drive.
Almost immediately, Yates was offered the use of a Ferrari Daytona from a dude named Kirk White, a Ferrari dealer.
You can't be a Ferrari dealer and not have that. Like that's a Ferrari dealer name.
Kirk White, Ferrari.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
I just assume him to look like Will Ferrell and Eastbound and Down with like Ric Flair hair.
Run him down. Kirk White Exotic Motors.
Yeah.
I'm from New York, but I talk like this. And although he initially accepted it, he eventually turned down the offer after he determined that he was more interested in having a fun and crazy adventure than he was with getting a record.
So he's just he's just taking a vacation now.
Yeah,
basically.
it's like, okay, this is the story of some guys who took a road trip with his son.
Well, I mean, I think I get it because like he's riding for Car and Driver, he's probably got it cleared, but he's like, if I'm the only one doing this, the record's not gonna mean as much. It's better to get a story out of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he hit up Chrysler's Dodge division PR expert BF Moon Mullins.
Hell yeah.
Of course,
That's
his
a
name
really
is
good
Moon. Who is also a friend of Car and Driver magazine. Yates got access to the Car and Driver's Boss Van 3, a
Hell
1971 Dodge custom sports van that had been lightly modified by the magazine with a 225 horsepower, 360 cubic inch V8. The van was lovingly named Moon Trash 2
Hell.
after their connection with Dodge, presumably because Dodge PR is amazing. Dodge
Yeah.
we've worked with a lot of car companies. Dodge is by far still like this.
Yeah.
Dodge paid us $10,000 for me to get a tattoo on my chest.
I'm so glad that they've just kept the tradition alive.
Yates and his team took off at midnight.
Woo!
Of course, that's the witching hour on May 3rd, 1971 from the Red Ball Garage in New York City, destined for the Portofino Inn in Redondo Beach,
Redondo.
California. What's up, Dondo?
Hey.
Where are my Dondo heads?
Now, since his 14-year-old son was too young to drive, he was put on police lookout duty, manning the handheld radar detector. The detector was one of only a few in existence, as police officers had only recently adopted the use of radar guns for traffic management.
Very interesting.
Now, the entire run was spectacularly uneventful.
Oh.
Yates finished in 40 hours and 51 minutes, which is really impressive.
That is pretty rad.
With an average speed of 70 miles per hour. About halfway through the race, a rattle in the front right wheel forced the team to slow their pace down to a maximum of 80 miles per. The van averaged 9.7 miles per gallon.
Oh my God.
And used 314.5 gallons of fuel for the entire 2,858-mile run. The biggest takeaway from this trip was that the 20-gallon gas tank had too low of a range and caused too many long fuel stops.
You ever go on a long road trip and get tunnel vision in the middle of the night? It's kind of scary.
It's super scary.
never
Like all of a sudden
experienced-
you just become super aware of how fast you're going, and like you're in a metal box and
Yeah.
you're responsible for like all these people's lives.
Yeah, everyone's sleeping.
Yeah.
Your freaking
That-
navigator is
Yeah.
sleeping.
Uh-huh.
That's the one rule. Like, your navigator's got to stay up with you, keep you awake.
That definitely happened on our trip to New Mexico because like Aaron and I were switching off,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a point I was like maybe 5 a.m, but I had stayed up like all night, and we're just driving, and I'm just like.
Yeah.
Shortly after the event, Yates published his result in Car and Driver. There's no way to predict the public's reaction. After all, this broke multiple laws and appeared to be pretty reckless. Car and Driver was actually very reluctant to run the story, adding in a disclaimer at the end to ensure that they distanced themselves as far from Yates's Cannonball as possible. But as soon as the story was published, letters began flowing in because they didn't have the internet.
Yeah.
There was a surprisingly high number of people who were actually in very high support of Yates' actions.
We love going fast. All hail Yates.
Oh, Yates is sticking it to the government.
I can't drive 55.
There were a lot of angry letters, but a majority of them seemed to be on Yates' side. The general consensus appeared.
Dear you, I'm a stuck-up little fuddy-duddy nerd. I'm scared to go to the fast. Suck it.
Why can't you just race trains and have a man in a barrel?
I am a school principal, and I find this absurd. Why can't we just have a little guy in a barrel? If you're bored.
The general consensus was that people should be allowed to drive at whatever speeds they felt comfortable, as long as it does not directly risk the lives of others. In his article, Yates wrote, quote,
From here on in, I'm gonna use the road according to my own skills and capabilities, and not in conformity with a 49-year-old cradle-to-grave squarehead bureaucrat who wouldn't know a good automobile if it ran him over.
Yeah, it sounds like Gary Glitter.
We'd like to thank Tenacious D for coming in.
That's what I assume Yates.
I keep, yeah, I love it.
He's a freaking cool-ass dude.
One of the most interesting responses to the article came in the form of a telegram from the Polish Racing Drivers of America, or the PRDA. They challenged Yates in the next official run. While it was somewhat of a tongue-in-cheek response from a very tongue-in-cheek organization, they were serious about running the race. Now, there was some competition. Yates supposed he had to host another event.
The Polish Racing Drivers of America didn't really take anything with complete seriousness.
God, they're such goofballs.
I
The
know.
PRDA.
But they were rumored to be building a Chevy van with enough auxiliary tanks to make the whole trip non-stop.
Damn.
When that was going to be some serious competition.
And a serious fire hazard.
Yeah, so just a big van full of gas. That was going to be some serious competition. So Yates had to assemble a dream team with the perfect vehicle in order to stand a chance. Initially, he was plagued with the same issues as before when it came to finding a partner.
Relatable.
Literally everyone was afraid of the risk. He asked basically everyone he knew, even racing legend Phil Hill.
I'm sorry, what?
Racing, the legendary Phil Hill
Phil.
is a true legend in the game. He asked basically everyone he knew, even racing legend Phil Hill to drive with him, to which he got the response, what about cops? And Yates was like,
Screw you, nerd.
Yates said that the race was less risky than actual racing because in actual racing, you're always at risk of dying in a violent 200-mile-per-hour crash.
That's a good point.
I suppose we've been so preconditioned that it's a reflex action. Good God, I'm terrified about losing my driver's license. How screwed up can our priorities get? That was Phil Hill. He was out.
So after weeks of searching, Yates was able to secure a partnership with Dan Gurney.
Hell yeah, we love Dan Gurney.
Hell yeah. A, quote, retired racer who is famous for being the first of 3 drivers ever to have won a race in sports cars, Formula One, NASCAR, and Indy. This guy did it all. To top it all off, Gurney contributed to racing in one very specific way. One very special way, gentlemen. Have you ever wondered why people spray champagne on everyone after winning a race?
Yes, I have.
Well, Dan Gurney started that. After he and his teammate A.J. Foyt won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1967, he spontaneously placed a finger over the opening of the champagne bottle and began spraying everyone. And that kind of that's been a tradition ever since.
He wanted the champagne to come out faster because he's a speed freak.
Yeah,
There's only one way to do that.
Gravity ain't fast enough for this pain. He's a pretty cool dude. He's a Gurney flap. It's named after Dan Gurney.
Sure is. Little piece of metal there that helps build up some pressure on the back of the wing, which helps the air pressure and create some downforce.
Yep.
Pretty
And
cool.
they also named like hospital gurneys after him because he carried his team.
Yeah, and it's a faster bed.
Yeah.
Along with Gurney, Yates also secured a Ferrari 365 GTB Ford Daytona from his old buddy Kirk White. At the time, the Ferrari Daytona was the fastest street car in the world. It had a max speed of 175 miles per hour, which was significantly higher than that of Moon Trash 2, which topped out at 105. The sizable fuel tank of the GT car also allowed for 300 to 350 miles of range per tank, which only meant he would have to stop to refuel about 8 times.
Very cool. 8 teams entered the next Cannonball, and they all prepared to start off on the evening of November 15th, 1971. The initial meeting point was Steve Smith's one-bedroom New York apartment at 10:30, an hour and a half before the start at the Red Ball Garage. The teams gathered with their eclectic collection of cars. The PRDA showed up in a brightly painted Chevy van, completely covered in sponsor logos.
Come on, guys. We're trying to not attract attention.
With enough tanks in the rear to hold approximately 300 gallons of fuel.
Jeez.
On the side, in big letters read, quote, PRDA goes coast to coast nonstop.
Guys, we sent you a letter. We said, don't make your car say anything about the race.
Moon Trash 2 was also present, this time being driven by a different team and painted flat black this time around. Yeah.
They got the memo.
At some point in the night, 2 brothers staggered in, unshaved and exhausted, apparently having spent the last 44 hours doing a nonstop run from LA to New York, bringing with them a clapped-out AMX. They walked in, announced they would be sleeping for the next 8 hours before they departed, and then left.
What?
Yeah. These nut jobs.
Did they just like get it reversed and they're like, oh, we messed up? Or is it just like they were like trying to flex on them?
I have no idea.
I want to know more about these unshaven guys.
Yeah, does that mean like their chest? Okay.
One surprising car to see was a brand new 1971 Cadillac Sedan DeVille. Apparently, the team of 3 people had found this car in the back of the New York Times classifieds as a drive-away deal. A drive-away deal used to be way more common than it is now, but essentially a person would pay someone to drive their car from point A to point B for them. It would pretty much allow you to have someone transport your car for a much lower price, or it was a good way to get paid to travel. Apparently, the person who was paying for the Cadillac had no idea that it was being used for this challenge.
That's messed up.
I could see how that'd be a problem. Like you buy like one of the new Blackwings that's coming out later, and then just 2 dudes just thrash it for 3,000 miles.
We'll deliver it.
Now, of course, Yates and Gurney had their Daytona, but it was surely no match for the sheer speed of the Dodge Travco motorhome.
Oh, yeah.
A 26-foot RV that's fuel economy could only be calculated in miles per gallon.
Shout out David Peterson, a.k.a. that dude in blue. What's up, dude?
As the other way was just far too painful.
As always, the rules were simple. The winner would be the person with the fastest documented time between the Red Ball Garage exit card and the registration desk punch-in at the Portofino Inn. You could use any car you wanted with any size team you wanted, as long as they were both present the entire time from start to finish. So same team had to do, like, you couldn't just
switch off.
Yeah, you couldn't drop the car off and have another team complete it.
It's not a relay race.
No. Good.
Thank you.
Other than those rules, though, the only rule was there are no rules.
The only rules are the rules, but other than the rules, there are no rules.
Well, that is a rule.
Yeah. Well, no, there's the rules, but other than all the rules, there are no rules. That's the only rule.
Right, but you can see how that's contradictory.
Yeah, there's like 8 rules, but beyond those rules, the only rule is there are none.
As the clock struck midnight, the first team exited the Red Ball Garage and began the race. The first team to always leave first was the Polish Racing Division of America, as they were always guaranteed their rightful claim of the pole position.
Nice.
Nice. They are some of the biggest goofballs in racing, it seems like.
The PRDA.
Yeah.
These guys don't take anything. Yates and Gurney set off soon after. Unsurprisingly, the Daytona was amazing.
Yeah, it's a Ferrari.
Yeah. Oh, it turns out this Ferrari rules. Almost to the point of being boring. At 100 miles per, the car was perfectly controllable and stable.
Great
the
car.
Daytona was a beautiful blue color with gold pinstriping and sponsorship logos and drivers' names on the fenders. The only issue they ran into was the windshield wipers refusing to work when it started to rain. That's the Tiana, baby. Other than that small snag, they were averaging 81 miles per by Columbus, Ohio.
81 miles to Columbus, Ohio.
Yep. I love that song.
Yep.
Of course, the windshield wipers were nothing compared to the absolute tragedy that had taken place on the motorhome. When exiting New York City, the Travco motorhome took a very sharp turn to avoid an obstacle in the road, spilling an entire plate of lasagna off the stovetop all over the camper floor. No! But luckily, there was a Garfield on board. He ate it all up.
Garfield says, I have no self-respect. I'll eat off the ground.
John, get my magazines. It's a Garfield.
He sits on magazines?
John, no, he reads them. John, get my magazines. Odie, don't touch my magazines.
Oh my God.
Garfield.
There's 3 things we know about Garfield. He hates Mondays.
Yep.
He loves lasagna. He reads a lot of magazines.
He subscribes to so many. Yates is quoted as saying,
Garfield makes a great passenger, but racing drivers make bad passengers that generally trust no one but themselves, and some refuse to ride with anyone at all.
but luckily for Yates, after an hour of watching him like a hawk, Gurney finally relaxed enough to comfortably let his buddy drive. Gurney drove the first 14 hours and 35 minutes of the trip with an average speed of 83.5 miles per. Obviously, Gurney was up to the task of driving for a long time because he's a famous endurance car driver. But it was still surprising for him to drive at such high speeds on the highway for that long.
As the day dragged on, the weather got worse and worse. As soon as they arrived in the high country of eastern Arizona near Flagstaff. The Ferrari was nearly uncontrollable in the snowy and slick weather because the tires had been overinflated to 40 psi for better fuel economy. Makes sense.
Yeah.
While he was certain the nearest competitors were states away due to the Ferrari's incredible pace, Yates was shocked to be passed by anyone, let alone an enormous Cadillac.
That's what happens when you let Yates drive. Gurney's like, come, I guess I'll let you because it's going to be awkward if I don't let you. And then frickin' Snoop DeVille passes him.
But the Cadillac had started 20 minutes earlier, which meant that they were still behind on time. Passing someone on a run was basically begging for a race. They chased the Caddy for nearly 100 miles before finally passing them. That thing's fast.
Yeah.
But it was tough. The team driving the Cadillac was driving it like they had stolen it.
They kind of did.
Yeah, they really did. Going over 100 miles an hour in a car with cloud-like suspension and steering input that was more of...
suggestion.
Yeah, suggestion.
I learned how to drive in a 1985 Mercury Grand Marquis.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Which is like a 27-foot long car. And it feels like a boat, and it's so fun. And it's just like the steering wheel is really thin too, so it's just like...
I love a good skinny steering
My
wheel.
dad used to have a Saab 900 convertible.
Ooh.
And I would refuse to put the top up in the winter, and I would just bundle up and pretend I was driving a boat.
He's quite nice in the summer.
Like a tugboat.
Is that how your dad sounded?
No, that's my tugboat captain voice.
No, it's cold now, but you should come back come June. It's quite nice here in the summer.
The cranberries will be done by then.
Yeah, cranberries will be done. We'll get some lobster fest. You should come back for lobster fest. Don't go down that road. That's where the psychos live.
I've always wanted to go to Kentucky for Lobster Fest.
Yeah, man, Kentucky Lobster Fest. It's like New Orleans for Mardi Gras. Go to Run with the Bulls in Pamplona. And then Lobster Fest in Kentucky, baby.
What is happening?
That's Kentucky, man. That's what Kentucky's like.
What is a Kentucky accent, though?
It's kind of like this.
I refuse to believe that.
Oh, you better watch out. The dump trucks are bad this year.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Just keep your head on a swivel. We got the psychopaths
What
on that
is
road, and then all the dump trucks are real bad this year.
But with about the dump trucks, what does that mean though? Are they gonna?
They'll take your head clean off.
Yates did have one advantage that the Cadillac didn't. A freaking shortcut. Yeah. Traditionally, racers would take the congested Route 66 and I-40 network, but Yates and Gurney would be taking a 15-mile stretch of road through Prescott National Forest to find a straighter line. The route was filled with sharp turns and 1,000-foot drop-offs on turns without guardrails. But that was a risk they were willing to take to secure the victory.
Oh yeah, get the dub.
Both teams at this point were cruising at about 125 miles per hour when they hit an iced-up bridge, and both almost completely ate it. After being traumatized by their near-death experiences, both teams finally slowed down. As soon as they got through the shortcut, they opened it up to 140, which was also the only time in the entire run that they got a speeding ticket. A few minutes later, after the police officer asked them, "How fast does this thing really go?" they were destined to find out. They maxed out the Daytona at 172.
Dang.
Through all of their reports after the race, they maintained that the cop car chasing them down was more dangerous than anything they had been doing the entire ride over.
They could have just outrun the cop.
Yeah, you can't outrun a radio.
When I was watching the Gumball 3000 when I was in high school, like a Lamborghini driver he had a cop radio in his car, and he was like, the cruiser was like calling it in. He was like, yeah, this Lamborghini just passed me up. Like, I assume that they're at this mile marker, and they were like 8 miles past it.
God.
So they were outrunning the radio.
Wow.
Does this have anything to do with the Gumball 3000 or no?
No.
Okay.
It's probably inspired. Well, it's called Cannonball, and then Gumball is like even goofier.
I think we'll probably get into that in the next episode.
35 hours and 54 minutes had elapsed when the hotel clerk punched their ticket. A new record by a long shot.
Woo!
They were certain that a myriad of delays had led to nothing but failure, but surprisingly, there were no other competitors in sight when they arrived. While waiting at the finish line, Gurney said, "You know, the best thing about this whole deal is the fact that we came the entire bleeding distance without bothering anybody. Nobody else even knew we were on the road. As long as you can do something without endangering anybody or inconveniencing them, how can you say something like the Cannonball Baker is wrong?"
I doubt that they didn't inconvenience anyone.
Yeah, I bet they inconvenienced some people. That cop.
Yeah. Well, he was pretty psyched, though.
The PRDA came in second with a time of 36 hours and 47 minutes, having had to stop for a single 7-minute fuel stop.
Nice.
How can you fill 300 gallons of fuel in 7 minutes?
I have no idea.
Apparently maneuvering the extra 1,800 pounds of gasoline was difficult, as they almost rear-ended a New York City transit bus within 15 minutes of starting. It was obvious that there was no clear solution to being the fastest. The size of your car had little impact on the results, as it was the modifications and limitations of those modifications that really equalized the playing fields.
Bars. Of all the cars that competed in the 1971 November race, the Travco motorhome definitely stuck out like a sore thumb. The team stated that the thought process behind the car was, quote, is it practical? No. Is it profitable? No. Is it convenient? No. Will everyone think we're crazy? Yeah, so let's do it. The Dodge Travco motorhome was a crazy idea. The vehicle was provided by a, quote, certain ex-president of a certain giant auto manufacturer. They filled the 27-foot RV with journalists and racers alike with the sole intent of breaking up the intercontinental crossing record in a motorhome.
And this is where we spilled the lasagna. And this is where Garfield sleeps.
Hey, get off my magazines!
The crew included a Union 76 gas rep, a sports writer from the Chicago Today newspaper, a motorsport photographer, a NASCAR driver, and a journalist. Unsurprisingly, the motorhome scored the highest time, showing up to the finish line almost 20 hours later than the previous contestant. With an average speed of 50.8 miles per hour, the team got a final time of 57 hours and 25 minutes. Still not bad. You know?
That's like the same as the barrel dude.
Yeah, that was a fast enough time for the team to meet the incredibly niche record of fastest continental crossing in a motorhome, and they were officially recognized in the Guinness Book of World Records.
The March 1972 issue of Car and Driver magazine had a cover blurb, "Coast to Coasting in 36 Hours," along with a 2-page spread inside with the results. And the entire thing freaking blew up. Media outlets were covering the story, and the phones, they was ringing nonstop. Gurney was surprised that after all the things he had won, like Le Mans, Spa, and Indy, and all the champagne he had sprayed, it was the Cannonball Run that he became most famous for. Now, it was clear that another Cannonball would be held after that, as audiences loved the outlaw nature of the entire thing, though there was once again a pretty obvious divide on the morality of the event. In a, quote, nation of spectators, Yates was certain his actions would lead to change. Yates firmly believed in a quote from Louis Brandeis, an Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, who once said, "If we desire respect for the law, we must first make the law respectable."
By driving an RV across the country.
This is a lot of mental gymnastics to just drive really fast across the country.
It's like, dude, we get it. You want to have a fun weekend with your buds.
I don't think it's... that's a component of it, but I think Yates did believe that this was going to... It got a bunch of press. It drew attention to the whole thing. It just happens that it was an RV, a Ferrari, and a van.
Yeah, it just happens that it's like a bunch of dudes from New York in journalism who did a fun thing. That's why people liked it. No one was like, "Oh, maybe we shouldn't just be able to drive 55." I don't think it inspired anybody to be like, "Yeah, it turns out it is safe."
Maybe not, but I think
people were like, I want to do that.
I know, but I do believe that Brock Yates believed in what he was doing.
Oh yeah, 100%. He believed that he was going to change the world, but I don't think it was just I don't think it was an insincere guise for him just to do. Totally.
I'm just saying there's this grandiose vision.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but it's I think we should not just on him.
We're not. We're just saying this is kind of an entitled dude that thinks he can do whatever he wants because he wants to drive faster and he wants the speed limits to be higher, which is not the most pressing issue at the time.
Right,
there's people getting hit with fire hoses and shit.
Yeah, it's not. This isn't the same as the civil rights movement.
No,
is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get it. That being said, a lot of people didn't see the entire purpose of the event. A group of people driving across the country as fast as possible wasn't going to get the government's attention. It was only a recipe for people to get hurt. A few of the letters Car and Driver received expressed that exact sentiment. Quote, What will happen when every virile male thinks they're in the top 10% of drivers? That's every male, by the way.
Yeah.
Not everyone will be able to differentiate between Gurney and his Ferrari and Joe Blow and his GTO. Damn,
Hey,
shots
man.
fired.
Joes get a lot of flack.
Yeah.
Average Joe Blow.
I think that quote really nails it because, like, dude, I have to humble myself probably every other week. Like last night at our karting event, I got my ass kicked. Wasn't even in the top 15 of drivers. At Donut, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm not that good.
I'm constantly surprised by how good of a driver I am.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think I have a lot of confidence in my driving, but then we go to tracks and stuff, and I'm
you're
pretty
learning.
fast.
You're learning.
According to Yates, seeking justification for driving what was the greatest passenger car in the world at the time at 100 miles per hour was elitism at its worst. No, it's not. The fact that we as a society built the cars to the lowest common denominator in order to adhere to the safety crusade was abhorrent. In his eyes, all men should strive to be as skilled of a driver as Gurney. There was no equality in skills, only in our rights. It was our lack of ambition that allowed the government to impose so many restrictions on automobiles in the country. And in his eyes, he was standing up to take back the rights that were rightfully his as a affluent white guy. Brock Yates dreamed of a society that allows drivers to drive based on skill, a set of laws that rewards experience and punishes blunders. Honestly, reading his thoughts on the matters, it gives off some very strong Unabomber manifesto vibes. Throughout his
I don't know
life,
if that's fair.
Throughout his life, he was very invested in the idea that we should allow people to drive as fast as they want as long as they know the punishment. To an extent, that's the general idea that allows the German Autobahn to thrive. A set of loose regulations surround people who drive safely at a speed based on their experience and comfort level. Still, though, driving across the country as fast as possible isn't exactly the most effective way to prove that.
Also, getting a driver's license in Europe is way harder than it is over here.
Way
in the US.
harder.
So he wants more rules and less rules at the same time.
Yeah.
How so?
He wants like looser restrictions for people that have more experience, but then people that are not as great of drivers, like they have to drive slower.
I mean, I think he's subscribing to like a belief that like people will know their comfort level and thus drive at that skill level, which is just not true. I mean,
but he also like harped on bureaucracy, and that's like the biggest like disconnect in my mind is like he wants more bureaucracy when he actually like hates it.
Right. As always, more people loved the idea than hated it. Letters poured in asking for the date of the next race. The voices of those who disapproved would never be able to outweigh the voices of those who were completely in love with it. Laws were still being drafted and proposed that would hinder Yates's vision of an automotive utopia. So, despite the fame, the event didn't have the impact he wanted. That left him only one option: to host another Cannonball Run.
Another one! Get your vans ready, baby.
Welcome to a special episode of Past Gas. We are all in our living rooms separately. You know why? Won't talk any more about it. We're gonna power through this and have a good episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all you guys have to say? Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm very glad to talk. Yes. I'm very glad to talk to you guys because I've been in my apartment now for 2 weeks, basically, by myself. It sucks. I don't know what else to say. This week, we are doing the Cannonball Run Part 2. Last week, we talked about the inaugural Cannonball Run, why they started it, how it was a protest against government regulation. That was also a transcontinental race, raced illegally by outlaws like Brock Yates and the Polish racing team.
Yeah.
So
I think calling them outlaws is a little, I don't know. It's a stretch.
Well, it was
yeah,
illegal.
I think they kind of romanticized it a little bit, but it's just like guys speeding.
Mm-hmm.
That's fair. It was just guys speeding, but speeding is illegal. It is the lowest form of being an outlaw. I was an outlaw yesterday.
ripping the tag off your mattress. That's the lowest.
That's actually for the manufacturer. You can rip all the tags you want off your mattress.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what the Boston Tea Party was about. They were like, "Let me rip this mattress tag off, or give me death."
I have not even introduced ourselves yet. I'm Nolan Sykes. With me over teleconference, as always, is one James Pumphrey.
Hi. We're working out the kinks. We're getting it.
Yeah, we're getting there. And Joe Weber.
What's up, Past Gas Nation?
All right, yeah. So let's roll that theme song, I guess.
Past Gas Podcast. It's about cars, it's not about forts.
After stories of the second running appeared in Car and Driver and Auto Week magazines, the secret was out. It seemed like everyone in the nation was talking about the Cannonball Run. Letters and phone calls poured in offering support, dismissal, and occasionally outright disdain for the event. You know, nerds.
Yeah.
Got him.
Oh, no.
In the end, though, it seemed as though a majority of the public viewed the race as a chance for a small group of, quote, mostly trained drivers to just blow off some steam and embrace their wild side while pursuing a record that most people thought was impossible to break. And now that the story was being talked about on national news broadcasts, it seemed like as good a time as any for Brock Yates to announce the next event. The third Cannonball Run was scheduled for November 13th, 1972.
Step one, as always, was finding the car. Now, Kirk White, the man who had lent Yates and Gurney his Ferrari Daytona, had just sold that Ferrari Daytona. And that meant that revising his previous strategy and breaking records with the Ferrari was off the table. Turns out, being an editor of Car and Driver wasn't exactly giving Yates Ferrari money. So he had to find an alternative.
Yeah, car journalism doesn't pay Ferrari money.
I think technically we're car journalists, and we can't even afford Evos. Anyway.
That is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Maybe an Evo 2. An Evo 2, maybe.
Yeah, maybe an Evo 2. But it would be a bad financial decision for either of us.
Did you guys see that Evo 9 Jackie Chan edition?
No.
That I posted in Slack?
That's cool.
I guess they just let him design an Evo 9 and they made 50 of them.
Whoa.
That's sick.
He famously loved Evos. He drove them in I forget what movie, but he drives an Evo in some movie.
Like a bunch of different movies. He seems like he's sponsored by Mitsubishi because he drives like Pajero turbo in like this 80s movie. He drives an Evo 3, he drives an Evo 9, and one of those Starions too.
Oh, that's cool.
I love Starions.
Yeah.
Those are sick.
Yeah.
There's this guy named John Lazarak who has an LS7 swapped Starion, and it's one of the fastest cars I've ever been in. I got to ride in it at an autocross, and
it's crazy.
My eyes almost came out of their sockets. It was amazing.
Yeah, that's a wild car.
Dude, you almost pulled the mask.
Yeah. It was crazy. Like air horns were playing as my eyes flew out of out of my skull.
Auga!
And little sneak peek, we're doing Up to Speed on Pajero coming up soon. I think I'm gonna record it either today or Monday. So
that's cool.
From my home.
We can both film our shows at the same time. We don't have to share equipment anymore.
Yeah, normally Nolan and I can't film at the same time. We gotta alternate, but hey, now we can.
All right. Immediately, Brock reached out to Moon Mullins, the PR man, with a plan from Dodge that he was able to borrow the Moon Trash 3 wagon from. At this time, Dodge was heavily involved with Cotton Owens, an ex-stock car and NASCAR driver out of Spartanburg, South Carolina. Cotton Owens was a pretty cool dude. He was known as the king of the modifieds. Owens found most of his success in the field of stock car racing, winning 19 out of the 23 races he entered in 1949, and tallying up 54 more wins in 1951. Holy crap.
That's a lot of wins.
Yeah, this guy is a god.
But
Also, dude, what's with NASCAR drivers have the coolest names?
yeah,
Cotton Owens.
that's a sick name. That's why I like.
what would your NASCAR name be if you raced in NASCAR?
I think I would keep my name, but I'd add nasty to the beginning, so I'd be Nasty Nolan Sykes.
That's tight. Am I allowed to change my last name too?
Yeah, you can just be whatever you want.
I think my name would be like Pickle Martini Jr.
Oh, nice. Mine would be like Patina Flywheel.
Oh yeah, that's like two parts of a car. Those are two car terms. You wouldn't have any other choice but to be a race car driver.
No,
They'd be like,
forced into it.
You want to go to med school? Not with that name. Get behind the wheel.
Yeah, Dr. Patina Flywheel. Get out of here.
So 24 of those wins in 1951 were consecutive, which is amazing. This guy, how do I not know about this guy already? This guy's the best. He was also a three-time United States Modified Championship winner. He also won in 1957 at Daytona Beach, securing Pontiac's first NASCAR victory. So this guy's got a nice little legacy in NASCAR. Cotton Owens' racing career was an interesting one, and like many racers, it was dotted with the occasional accident. In 1955, he was involved in a 4-car pileup at Daytona. The accident was so severe that one of the cars actually burst into flames, and Owens reportedly risked his life to pull the burning driver from his car and rolled him around on the sand to snuff out the flames. Later, when being forced into the ambulance in a state of shock, he tried fighting police officers and paramedics while only saying, "I've got to get my car." I love this guy.
What a day.
This is, seriously.
What Owens was really known for was the ability to build Dodges. In the mid to late 60s, Chrysler provided full factory support to Cotton Owens' garage. He helped create some of the most impressive Hemi-powered stock cars at the point. It was well known that any car touched by Cotton Owens was almost unbeatable. Even racers such as Mario Andretti and Al Unser would come to Owens for advice and to race in his cars. In 1998, he was named as one of NASCAR's 50 greatest drivers, and he was one of 5 individuals chosen to be inducted into the 2013 NASCAR Hall of Fame.
All right, I'm glad that he got his due, his recognition. This guy's amazing.
Owens was the guy when it came to getting a race car done. And through a classic I know a guy who knows a guy connection, Dodge PR man Moon Mullins connected Yates with Owens. When it came to it, Moon Mullins still had to find Yates a car. Now, this was 1972. The muscle car era was still going, but slowly losing life. As discussed in a previous episode, restrictions such as speed limits, safety concerns, build quality, and most importantly, the Clean Air Act were starting to limit the intensity that muscle cars once held. Dodge has never exactly been the company to shy away from sponsoring just about anyone or anything with a pulse. I mean, they paid us to get a Dodge tattoo on my chest. That's a real story.
Yeah. I love when people ask if that's fake.
Yeah, it's not. It's not fake. No. I have a real Dodge tattoo on my chest.
It does. I love seeing it in real life and remembering that was the thing that happened.
Yeah, every once in a while I'll be getting out of the shower and I'll catch myself and I'll be like, "You stupid idiot."
Dodge saw supplying a car to Yates and his Cannonball as an excuse to help throw muscle cars into people's faces once more and try to prevent the inevitable die-off that new regulations would surely entail. Mullins found a 340 cubic inch Challenger V8 in the press fleet and sent it over. Yates then sent it to Cotton Owens' garage in order to get it modified into a, quote, modern-day moonshine runner that would be set up for cross-country racing. When Yates flew into Spartanburg to pick up his car, Cotton gave him this advice.
Just imagine you're hauling 50 gallons of white liquor instead of high test and, well, you'll be fine.
So dumb.
The gunshots are part of the quote.
The race was set for November 13th, 1972. At one point, the entries for the third Cannonball reached 37 teams, although several of them dropped out early. Apparently, one of the people to drop out was none other than Edsel Ford II, who had planned to run a 2-liter Capri race car.
Of the teams that didn't drop out, there was a pretty big variation in the vehicles chosen. There were multiple Porsche 911s, a 1951 Studebaker powered by a modified Chevy V8 brought by some airline pilots. There was a De Tomaso Pantera.
Yeah, we covered that on Bumper to Bumper, one of those cars.
We got to do an episode on De Tomaso. He's a crazy character. He fled Argentina because he plotted to overthrow the government, and then he became a race car driver for Maserati. Dude's crazy.
Dang, we should do that.
And there's also a Mercedes 250 SE sedan. Shockingly, there was even a Cadillac limousine entered by a team called Wright Bra Racing Team. Wright
Interesting
Bra
name.
Racing Team.
It's the right bra,
Right,
dude.
bra?
It's right, bra.
No, that's the right bra.
Yeah, is this the right bra? Yeah, bra.
That's the right
Is
bra.
this right, bra?
Yeah, that's the right bra.
All right.
The night of the race, people met at the Red Ball garage and discussed their plans. Yates intended to take the newly completed I-85 through the Shenandoah Valley and then pick up US 40 West. The interstate was less than 3/4 completed in 1972, so even being able to use the interstate as much as they did was still amazing. Now, before the race began, Yates gave his normal spiel explaining the rules.
There's only one rule, and that's that there are no rules.
It's still a rule. That's a rule.
It's 2 rules. Word had slipped to the press about the times of the event, and outside of the Red Ball garage was swarming with personalities from multiple news stations. To try and beat the crowd before, quote,
some nut triggered an all points bulletin across the entire East Coast.
Yates was the second to leave. He left right behind the bowling racing division of America, so once again claimed their rightful pole position.
Nice. Very fun.
Yeah, they seem like a bunch of fun guys, actually.
Yeah.
They seem like a bunch of dudes from like a movie my dad would like or something. Like very like National Lampoony. Like John, I imagine John Candy is one of these guys, or like would play him. Yeah.
Like just some merry pranksters.
Yeah, exactly, Joe. I think that's very well put. They sound exactly like some merry pranksters.
Immediately, Yates was slowed down by monsoon-like weather in Virginia. Quote,
it was like going through a car wash.
the storm delayed every team and was hailed as, quote, the worst storm of the year. A team that brought a Chevy Vega quickly found out that their lack of cruise control was a real problem when it came to the comfort level of the ride. So with some modern ingenuity, they invented some cruise control for themselves. They strategically stuck a snow scraper they had lying around in the trunk and jammed it under the steering wheel onto the gas pedal.
Oh God.
They did that.
Wait, so they're immobilizing the steering wheel and also jamming the gas pedal at the same time?
I'm sure it's like under the dash somehow, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's pretty awesome. And they did that for the entire race, keeping the car pinned at the top speed of 110 miles an hour.
That's absurd.
I don't know. If I was racing, I don't think cruise control would be like my biggest priority.
It was highway racing.
That's true.
Yeah, because
it's just a straight line.
Yeah, and you'd get like some pretty bad leg crampage. But that's
true.
Absolutely insane, and I would not do that.
One team that was driving a Mercedes-Benz 250 SE sedan was filled with some pretty lofty names, the biggest of these being Pete Brock, also known as the designer of the Shelby Daytona Coupe. We mentioned him in Ferrari versus Ford Part 3. Now Pete Brock and his co-drivers Dick Gilmartin and Jack Cowell had a very specific, if not blasphemous, idea in mind for how to get across the continent. An hour before the race, Brock's co-drivers arrived at Red Ball after completing their, quote, mysterious quest to find the proper vestments. That sounds very weird.
Mm-hmm. Trying to find vests for the race?
Yeah.
Matching vests?
Inside this bag of goodies was a pair of black slacks and matching shirt with a reversed collar. According to Brock,
they're dressed like priests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They dressed up like priests.
Yeah.
And the costumes fit the team name pretty well as they went by the Flying Fathers. Gil Martin committed to the bit with a South Boston Irish accent.
Oh, yeah, no, we're just, we're going over here to help all these sick kids. We got to help the kids.
That's South Boston.
Are you going to do that for the entire race, dude?
Yeah, I think so. I think I will. Go park the car in Harvard Yard.
There wasn't a lot of traffic on the interstate, and that meant that the Flying Fathers really were flying down the highway. Though that changed when they hit Oklahoma, where they got pulled over after flying over a railroad crossing to discover a cop on the other side. Of course, when the cop saw them, he said he was concerned for their safety and asked if they'd been drinking, which Gil Martin incredulously responded,
Speed? Liquor?
I mean, priests, they definitely don't like going fast. So I think that was a great incredulous response by Gil Martin,
Yeah.
No man of God would ever want to drive fast.
No, but they
or
were.
drink liquor.
No,
they drink.
They love liquor. It's like part of the thing, like wine.
Yeah.
It's like they do it every Sunday morning. They're like, yeah. Obviously, those accusations were impossible. They were priests, after all. When the officer replied, "We clocked you at more than 85," Gil Martin went all in. He's like, "Oh, did you now?" They told the story of how they were in a hurry to deliver the Monsignor's private car from New York to L.A. The officer kindly reduced the speed from 85 to 70 miles per hour on the ticket and allowed the righteous men to pay in cash.
That's actually pretty cool because I got a speeding ticket a few months ago, and the cop clocked me at 89, even though I swear to God I was going 82. But he was like, I'm doing you a favor here because 89 is reckless driving, and that's a misdemeanor. And I was like, oh, thanks.
Was this on the way up to Atascadero?
Yeah, I was going down over the 46, I think, the same highway that James Dean, died on.
Yeah. Right by that garlic town?
No, that's Gilroy.
Oh.
Yeah.
By the artichoke town?
No, I can't remember where it was. I think it was outside Lost Hills. But yeah, I still maintain that I was going 82. Anyway.
Tell it to the judge. I got something to say. Tell it to the judge.
Well, it turns out they weren't the first contestants to annoy the fuzz. Down the road at the Arizona-New Mexico border, after cresting a small hill, the Flying Fathers were greeted by a wall of flashing red and blue lights. As they slowly drove through the wall of police officers, they realized that they were going to be let through. After making it through, they recognized a couple of the cars from the Red Ball Garage. It turned out that the 5-0 had caught word of the event and set up a roadblock to stop as many of the competitors as possible in their tracks. The Heavenly Prospectors opened up as soon as they got through the roadblock and made a great pace towards the finish line.
Now, Brock and his team had almost the perfect run. They had hit only green lights since they arrived, and they only had one actual run-in with the police. But as they entered Los Angeles, they were stopped by a train in Riverside for 12 minutes. When they arrived at the Portofino Inn, 2 other cars had arrived before them. They had lost by exactly 12 minutes.
Oh my God.
Dang.
That sucks.
That sucks.
Yeah.
One team that didn't make it to the finish line, though, was the Wright Bra Racing Team. The Wright Bra Racing Team was driving the brand new Cadillac limousine. They got the limousine by convincing the owner of the limousine service that they were borrowing the limo for 3 women who were in town for a few days of fun in New York City. Though they did at least pimp out the limo with racing tires and aircraft headlights, the team was sponsored by the Wright Bra Company, which is how they got their name. Almost immediately, the limo was pulled over after passing a trooper. The team managed to get lost in Texas. During their fantastic time in beautiful Texas, one of the team members was taking a nap in the back, like you do, and woke up to the puzzling realization that gee, the windows fell up. As it turns out, the third driver of the team, who was very inexperienced with driving, had fallen asleep at the wheel about 30 miles outside of El Paso. The limo went off the road and rolled a few times just short of a ravine. The back of the limo had no seatbelts, which was rather unfortunate for the driver who was taking a nap back there. The accident caused them to receive a nice dunking from a porta potty that they had brought with them.
Oh, God. No. No. Why would... I mean, I understand why you'd want that, but no.
Wait, so they're towing a porta potty and then they crash and the porta potty dumps all that liquid into the back of the limo?
No, I think that they probably had like a smaller, like sort of maybe like camping toilet.
Yeah, they probably.
Going.
I think it was like a little squatty potty that they just had back there.
Yeah,
and it's full of just gush.
Yeah.
Gush.
I mean, these aren't that long of races. They're like what, like 40 something hours. Like, if you poop in the limo, you're a jerk.
Yeah, it ruins the limo.
Yeah,
man,
it ruined the limo so bad that they bought it from the owner.
Oh my God.
Hey man, really love the limo. We're actually gonna buy it from you. You don't need to see it or anything. We just really like the title.
Oh, cool! I just want to get some stuff out from.
No, no. I mean, what kind of stuff? Because I can send it to you.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, you guys are here. I just like run out and grab some of the stuff.
No.
Look, dude, we're gonna send you your stuff. All right, just get out of here.
I just think I should go. Oh my God! Oh my God!
Hey, is there any chance of doing a limo for a season of High-Low?
Probably.
I'm gonna say no.
Yeah.
Unless we turn it into like one of those monster truck limos.
Now Yates had won again in the end.
But sorry, just one about limos. Like I used to think that limos were like the ultimate sign of like success.
Yeah,
fanciness
like
and
fans.
Fanciness. Now I would much rather just have like not a limo, but maybe be driven in like a nice car than have a big car like that. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not very practical. You end up having to like walk from the front to the back with like just ducking.
Yeah.
It's like too long. You don't need a car that long. But
that's why I like those conversion vans with like the extra thing on top for standing.
Yeah.
You can stand up in it.
Yeah. That's like what LeBron has.
Yeah,
it's
like a nice
NBA. Yeah.
Yeah, nice like Sprinter van with like luxurious seating. Sounds like my speed.
And a GameCube.
Yeah, 100%. Wall-to-wall TVs and a water fountain that only has Powerade in it. Yates had won again. In the end, 26 teams reached the Portofino, and most importantly, the race was no longer a secret. Literally everyone knew about it. It was on the news. Reporters were everywhere. Now, I know that we said a few times now that the race was no longer a secret, but this time, like, everyone really knew about it. People were begging for the next race, but at the same time, the U.S. started to feel like it was unraveling around people. Watergate was shaking the U.S. political system to its core, and Vietnam was still going on, entering its 22nd year by 1973. And things weren't exactly sunshine and rainbows over in the Middle East either. Tensions were high as it was about to erupt into the Yom Kippur War. The Yom Kippur War resulted in the intensification of the Organization of Petroleum, a.k.a. OPEC. You ever heard of it? Now, OPEC tightened regulations on oil pricing and production, which led to what would be known as the 2-year oil crisis.
Oh, there it is.
There it is. The oil crisis began after an embargo on oil products was placed, causing the prices of oil to skyrocket over 400% from $3 per barrel in the U.S. to over $12. Lines formed at gas stations all over the country. By 1974, Nixon had fled office and the oil crisis was in full effect. Worst of all, Yates's biggest fear had finally taken shape. The double nickel laws put in place a 55 mile per hour restriction on all highways. The goal of the law was to conserve fuel as well as create a safer driving environment. Signs popped up all over the place that stated 55, stay alive. Now, while it's true that due to aerodynamics, each 5 miles per hour you drive over 50 miles per hour is like paying an extra 15 cents per gallon of gas. 55 is a very boring speed.
Oh my God, it's the worst.
Yeah.
It's like the 25 for highways. 25 sucks.
Yeah.
Like when me and my ex-girlfriend, we went up to Tahoe to buy a truck, and I had to tow it back, and it was a huge old F1 or F250 on a U-Haul trailer, and on the trailer it's like, hey, stick to 55. So I stuck to 55 all the way from Tahoe down to LA. It took us like 16 hours to get down here.
Oh my God.
That was like 12 hours. But it was the most boring drive of my life. 55 sucked.
Did you stay safe though?
I did stay safe. Didn't have I stayed safe, stayed slow, no blowouts, so it was all good.
Suddenly the notion of recreational driving for any reason became unpatriotic. The Cannonball was indefinitely put on hold.
But indefinitely wasn't all that indefinite. The next race was scheduled for April 23rd, 1975. The general view of participants was, well, this sucks. Oh, well. Looks like it might get a bit better soon, though. Entries for the race were submitted directly to the magazine, which is pretty cool. It's like Power Tour now, basically. While the race started as a, f*** the establishment type of thing, a lot of that sentiment had disappeared by the fourth race. At this point, it was basically either people chasing the record or people pretending to chase the record while just messing around and having some fun. So, James, you and I were having a discussion about this a little earlier, how this is kind of what you expected at this point in this story. You know?
Yeah, it's like kind of a weak thing to be like, yeah, I'm going to stand up for the man by, driving a car really fast. It's like, okay, all right, dude. Now for this event, Yates decided just to run the Challenger again, this time with a few updates. He installed a 22-gallon NASCAR fuel tank and a posi traction rear diff. A serious entry, though, came from Jack May, a real estate broker from Florida. May was gunning for the record, and he brought his cream Ferrari 246 GTS Dino. People were too distracted to notice the 1973 Chevy pickup from Modesto, California. While the truck didn't exactly have much going for it, its driver, Jack McCoy, did. Now, McCoy was one of the best stock car racers on the West Coast, and his 454-powered Chevy had extra fuel tanks, which allowed the pickup to have a real chance against the competition.
Dude, I want to drive a 454 C10 across the country. That'd be sick.
Yeah, man.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah,
that sounds so cool.
Yeah, I like trucks, man.
I've been looking at trucks all week.
Yeah, there's like an old Chevy truck called a Cheyenne. I think it might be a C10 like trim level or something. But I was in an old folks home, Casey's grandparents, like before we got quarantined. I was hanging out with them, and this dude just has like the nicest like old Chevy truck with like 454 badges on the side and just like big like Mixie Thompsons on the back. It's like yeah, an old man definitely built this, but like that old man used to be a badass. Probably still is. Yeah.
In the face of the double nickel laws, citizens had discovered and popularized citizen band radio, also known as CB. And by 1973, Channel 19 had become a coast-to-coast alert system that people could report the presence of smokies or
I got a smoky over there.
cops.
Yeah.
While the racers expected CB to be a huge advantage, it turned out that in Ohio specifically, the truckers were not thrilled about so many cars whizzing by using their channels to monitor the police, and cops were also listening in. Ohio was and is still known for its ruthless enforcement of speed laws. Yates and his team lost over 30 minutes after being chased into a truck stop and forced to hide from the police. Have you ever hid from the police?
Yeah. Not in a car.
Me neither. Not in a car.
You just like pull over and you turn your car off and you pull your seat down.
No, have you done that, Joe?
Yeah. I might have been a little paranoid at the time.
Yeah.
But
oh, I get it.
I don't know if they were actually chasing me or not. There wasn't like lights or anything, but I was like, there was a time in my life where I was like a cop magnet, and I was just like always, I never like stopped doing shady shit, but I would just like get pulled over and get arrested. I got arrested 5 times in like my junior year
of high school. Wow.
Damn.
Yeah.
For doing what?
Having fun. I don't know.
Yeah, dude, that sounds cool.
When I was like 19, me and my buddies were skating at Cal Poly, and Cal Poly has a strict no skating policy, and we had to run from the campus police and jumped into some bushes to hide from them. It was fun.
Nice.
And that
it's fun if you don't get caught.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My story is not as cool. I was having fun, but it sounds like less fun than what Joe is.
Well, it turns out that you can have fun without getting arrested, and it took me way too long to figure that out.
Jack May and his Ferrari placed in first place, establishing a new world record of 35 hours and 53 minutes. 1 minute faster than the previous record made years earlier by Yates and Gurney in their Daytona.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
1 minute.
That's a lot. Not really. That's like so close when you consider how far they went.
Yeah, that's like 1,000th of a second. That's like
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah. The race wasn't very eventful for the teams, except for one team driving an old Bristol 410. Anatoly Arutinov and Bill Proyer showed up with hopes of having a competitive time in the Bristol 410. During the race, they encountered a young female hitchhiker in Tennessee. Since this was the age before picking up hitchhikers meant that you were probably going to get your head cut off, they stopped to pick her up. When a cop spotted a loose license plate on the Bristol, they were stopped and then charged with violating the Mann Act. Now, the Mann Act, a.k.a. the White Slave Traffic Act of 1910, is a relatively unknown law that was aimed at curbing sex trafficking in the U.S. by prohibiting the transportation of underage women across state lines for immoral purposes. Now, as Yates phrased it, the misunderstanding took hours to clear up and produced the most unusual and humorous excuse for a poor finish of all the cannonballs. Yeah, it's hilarious getting charged for sex trafficking.
Also, that it seems like that cop was like waiting to pull someone over for that super obscure law. Like just, I can't wait till I can, slap the Mann Act on someone.
Yeah, but I mean, it still is like illegal to transfer a minor across state lines, right?
Yeah, I think so.
mean,
If you're,
It should
not
be.
a guardian.
It should be.
Yeah, it should be. That's
Yeah, on May 5th, 1975, Time magazine published an article titled Cannonball Dash. The article told of an event that was unsponsored, illicit, and carrying no prize money. The Cannonball does not exactly compete in the public imagination with the Indy 500 or Le Mans. Yet, among the dedicated speed freaks, the non-televised, non-spectacular has become something of a legend in the 5 tenuous years of its existence. The Time article was shockingly positive, going so far as to note that the participants made no public nuisance of themselves, suffered no loss of life or limbs, and racked up a total of 12 tickets. The article managed to bring even more attention to the run. Specifically, this time it brought the attention of Hollywood.
ooh.
There were a lot.
Hey, that's where we live.
That's where we are, man. There were a lot of
You
movies.
talk about us?
Yeah, man. This is when we started to notice. There were a lot of movies that were loosely based on the event, such as the Sylvester Stallone classic Death Race 2000. More importantly, the movie Gumball Rally posed the biggest threat at jeopardizing the entire Cannonball event, as too much publicity would make it impossible to make a clean run.
It is unlikely that the final Cannonball would have ever happened if it wasn't for a guy named Hal Needham. Hal Needham was a Hollywood stuntman, starting his career as a stunt double for the TV Western Have Gun Will Travel, and quickly became one of the top stuntmen of the 1960s. His career in Hollywood led to his longtime friendship with one Burt Reynolds. At one point, Needham lived in Burt Reynolds' guest house for 12 years.
Oh my God.
And it was that friendship that allowed Needham the opportunity to direct his first movie, Smokey and the Bandit, in 1977. I know we have a lot of younger listeners. If you haven't seen Smokey and the Bandit, I think it holds up surprisingly well. It's a great movie. It's still very entertaining.
It's funny. It's got action. Got a little romance.
That's
Cars. Right. It's got fire chicken. It's great.
That's right, fire chicken. Needham decided he wanted to make a movie about the cannonball races. When it was mentioned that both Gumball Raleigh and Cannonball had already been made, he said, "F them, we'll make a better one."
They've actually made that movie twice. Okay.
Make a better one. Dude, that's how you do it, man.
Yeah.
Of course.
That's like white guys with podcasts. They're like, wait, has a podcast ever been done? And then
what if we talk about
can make it
murder?
Car Murder coming soon from Donut. Anyway, so he was already a pretty insane guy who had recently attempted the speed record in the desert in a rocket car, and he wanted hands on research for his script. So the 1979 Cannonball was born. Because of his desire to host another Cannonball Run, Yates was fired from Car and Driver. That was all right, though, because it only topped off the rocky relationship with the magazine that Yates had been maintaining for years. Yeah, I think I would like Brock Yates. Mm-hmm. He does kind of seem like a wild and crazy guy.
Yeah, I think I would have fun.
The next run was scheduled for April 1st, 1971. He divorced his wife a few years earlier, and Yates married one Pamela Reynolds, famously known throughout the racing community as Lady Pamela. He married her in 1978. Needham thought that he had a great idea. He wanted to disguise his race team as an ambulance. No one would dare pull over an ambulance, right? So Yates hit up the only guy he thought he could get his hands on a van, Dodge Chrysler PR expert Moon Millens. They got a full-size Dodge van outfitted with a 383 V8. They got lights on it, and they painted a Transcon Medevac livery on the side. They took out the 383, and they put a 440 big block under the hood, and they even painted a tiny counterfeit Michigan registration sticker on the rear license plate.
I think, now this is like the most illegal thing they've done.
Yeah. So now they have a hot rod van illegally painted to look like an ambulance with fake registration on it.
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
Nothing. The crew would be Needham, Yates, his wife, Lady Pamela, and lock, stock, and barrel owner, the restaurant where the race began, George Lysel.
Hey, we got the guy who owns the restaurant with us this time.
Now Pamela would play the patient. Her backstory was that she was a senator's wife with a rare lung ailment that needed to be transported to California for immediate surgery. And
that's amazing.
This is awesome.
And planes don't exist. I love that they have a backstory. A total of
these guys.
Yeah, a total of 47 teams entered the race, including a 1948 Rolls-Royce Silver Wraith imported from England, driven by an ex-royal family chauffeur. There was a Boss 302 Mustang, a few Porsche 928s, even two people who planned to ride a BMW R90S motorcycle nonstop. The PRDA chose to bring a white Chevy Z28, and the Hemmings magazine crew decided to bring a 1936 Ford panel truck. The entrants were comprised of journalists, writers, racers, doctors, lawyers, playboys, and hardcore industrialists. The eclectic collection of personalities comprised what would have become the final official Cannonball Run ever. The largest car in the collection was a 454-powered Chevy dually pickup that averaged 5.4 miles to the gallon and consumed 590 gallons of fuel on the trip. It won the critically acclaimed Friends of OPEC Award at the end of the race.
Cheeky.
Yeah.
Nice. The race kicked off with the PRDA once again taking the pole position.
Nice.
That joke never gets old.
Never does. Oh. Less than 80 miles down the road in New Jersey, Yates and his team were caught and pulled over on Interstate 80. This led to an amazing exchange between Yates and the two police officers. Yates and Lyle were dressed as the EMTs and exited the vehicle immediately to consult with the officers. Okay, now they're impersonating emergency personnel.
Yeah.
The three of them were able to convince the two officers that the person lying under the sheets on the stretcher in the van was a very important senator's wife who needed to be rushed to California as soon as possible, and flying was not an option due to her condition. After a bit of doubt, they talked their way out of the stop and continued on their way. The officers didn't realize that they had been had until the first stories of the event were published.
Dude, that's so embarrassing. If you're a cop, you're like,
You know what, man? I knew it. I told you, man.
No, I was saying I had a hunch.
To us in the steel womb of our Transcon medevac, Ohio resembled the Bonneville salt flats. After a while, the van, i.e., they go fast. After a while, the van began to act up, eventually destroying its transmission. By the time the teams had reached Missouri on April 2nd, authorities had realized what was going on and set up Missouri as a statewide roadblock. Missouri accounted for perhaps 30 arrests in a 12-hour span. One competitor was stuck in the slammer for 7 hours. Others were hauled before judges across the state. The cops were really not happy, even saying, if we catch that black Jaguar, we're going to put it in the crusher and its driver's in jail for life. But that didn't kill the contestant spirit.
You know what? Like, they can say that it didn't harm anyone, it didn't cause anyone inconvenience. They're causing millions of dollars in just like cop
taxpayer money.
Salary. Yeah,
judges.
Taxpayer money.
Yeah. Like, you know how expensive a roadblock is?
Yeah, to shut down a whole state?
Yeah.
Like, block off a whole state is insanely expensive.
Insane.
The event was initially created as a form of protest, a way for Brock Yates to help push his anti-restriction views. But in the end, the reasons behind it had changed almost entirely. As one competitor, Toli Arunatov, the same guy who got arrested because of the Mann Act, said, quote,
I was right, of course, but those high-speed hours being some of the most thrilling I have spent. They were also slashed with intervals of worry, boredom, conversations deep and shallow, inspirational highs and lows of extreme fatigue, all soaked through with humor. If it seems on paper as though I represent our little Volvo as some sort of microcosm, some tiny compendium of life itself streaking across America, well, that's only because it was.
That's a pretty cool quote, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, that I feel that way about our trip to Albuquerque.
Yeah.
I kind of love those moments where you're so exasperated and just exhausted that you just can't help but laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
The Cannonball allowed contestants to hide from the worries of real life, even if it was only for a few hours. For example, literally days before the race was the 3 Mile Island accident, and there was a major airline strike. The race became your world, and even in the face of a speeding ticket, it was still a getaway. It made sense why the police were struggling to catch that Jaguar. The black Jaguar XJS, driven by David Yarbrough and David Hines, took first in the event, completing the run in a record-setting 32 hours and 51 minutes. Coming in 8 minutes behind them was the Harvard team in their Mercedes led by Professor Thomas Hickley. Both teams averaged 88 miles per hour.
Yates, Needham, and the Transcon ambulance didn't fare so well. After a while, the Transcon and its transmission seemed to have decided that they no longer wanted to be together anymore. They broke up. The team was stranded underneath a massive cement dinosaur that someone had built as a sightseeing platform outside of Vegas. I haven't been there. Have you guys been to that thing?
I think so.
I've been to that in Fallout New Vegas, but never in real life. I think it's different. It's different than the one in Palm Springs. Anyway, so they hoisted the ambulance onto the flatbed and rode it all the way to the finish line, arriving 12 hours after first place.
We won by losing.
They finished the race with plenty of stories that Needham could take with him and use in the creation of his movie, The Cannonball Run. While Yates had warned that the contest could have turned into a, quote,
the automotive version of the Bay of Pigs,
it couldn't have gone better for the team. The 1979 running would be the last official Cannonball Run. The Cannonball Run movie, which was written by Brock Yates, was inspired by that very race. Initially, Burt Reynolds was not the first choice for the lead, but Steve McQueen had been diagnosed with stomach cancer, so the movie went into turnaround until a new actor could be found.
That's sad.
Yeah, from what I know about this movie, I think it's probably better that Reynolds was in it and not Steve McQueen.
Yeah.
Reynolds had promised he would never reduce himself to the level of farce of movies such as The Smokey and the Bandit, but all of a sudden his career was kind of slowing down, and he decided to subject himself to the movie for a record pay at the time of $5 million.
That's crazy.
That's a lot of money. Even now, that'd be like that's like a good rate for a big actor, right? $5 million?
I think so, yeah. I know like Jim Carrey was making like $21 million a movie. Like Will Smith and Tom Cruise.
That's
those
like
guys.
90s money too.
Yeah. It's crazy.
When filming the movie, Needham said some wise words that would make a Fast and Furious director weep. He said, "F the dialogue, let's wreck some cars." He tended to wrap up shooting by late afternoon and set up shop in the hotel bar. And at the end, less than 200,000 feet of film was exposed for the entire film, which was a little more than some advertising agencies would use for a 60-second commercial. So they used a lot of first takes,
God.
it sounds like.
Yeah.
I gotta watch it.
Yeah, it sounds like a fun set.
I'm going to watch this tonight. When it came time to decide if another Cannonball would be run, there was one event that forced Yates' decision. When talking to a contestant from the 79 race, the man pointed to a Lamborghini Countach in the corner and stated, quote,
"That's what I'll use to win the next Cannonball."
Recalling the 170-mile-per-hour rush of the Ferrari Daytona in his own record-setting run, he considered the impact of having a world-class driver such as Dan Gurney driving at such speeds, and then amateurs such as this man with his Countach. Yates decided that letting an absolute amateur on public highways was reckless and irresponsible, and decided then and there that the Cannonball races would be over. Huh.
That kind of goes against his like original ethos, right? That
absolutely. It's a total reversal.
Yeah, it sounds like he grew up.
Yeah, some growth, some character growth for Brock Yates.
Yeah, he's like, turns out I don't really believe that stuff. In 1984, Yates organized the first Cannonball One Lap of America, which began as a complete tour of the nation. The winners would be the team that ran the roughly 9,000-mile route in the shortest distance. You know the expression, speak of the devil and the devil may just appear. Well, in 1985, it was none other than Ralph Nader and his legal team who attempted to shut down the one-lap events. But they were unsuccessful, and One Lap of America events still continue to this day as an amazing way to take your car around the country and tour beautiful sights and racetracks. Now, to top it off, the event today is run by Brock Yates Jr. According to Yates, breaking a 30-hour record seemed basically impossible. With modern-day technology such as instant radar and improved radios and police coverage, the probability of making it from one coast to another without your time being ruined by repeated traffic stops was so low that it wasn't even worth considering. But where there's a will, there's a way. As the story of the original Cannonballers grew into legend and began to fade over time, there was and still is a devout group of people who are devoted to breaking the record no matter the cost. When you see people who are carrying the torch of the original Cannonballers, you usually see other large group events or solo runners attempting to beat the record. So many groups such as the 2904, the Coast to Coast Race, and even the Cannonball Memorial Run have their roots stemming directly from the original events of the 1970s. But where the continued legacy of Cannonball really shines is in the skill and art behind the solo runs that aim to beat the current record.
During an event similar to the Cannonball known as the U.S. Express, drivers Doug Turner and David Deem piloted their Ferrari 308 coast to coast in 32 hours in 7 minutes in 1983. As Ed Bolian, founder of the VinWiki app and the YouTube channel, puts it, quote, "It is a fraternity of lunatics that are still in love with the idea."
I could totally see him saying that too. Fraternity of lunatics.
That are still in love with the idea of the Cannonball enough to sink so much into trying to compete in any way. Big shout out to VinWiki and Ed Bolian. The 1983 record stood for decades until it was finally beaten by Alex Roy and David Mayer in 2006. They completed the trip in 32 hours and 7 minutes in a E39 BMW M5 that was painted to look like a German police car. Alex Roy held the record until Ed Bolian and his team beat him in 2013 with a time of 28 hours and 50 minutes. Jesus.
Damn, so he smashed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. In his 2004 Mercedes-Benz CL55 AMG. That was a mind-blowingly fast time. Once again, it seemed impossible that anyone would ever reach another time even close to this one. It was as if the stars had aligned and it was his destiny to hold an unbreakable record.
But records are meant to be broken, and as recently as December of last year, the record was smashed once more. Arnie Timon, Doug Tabbitt, and Berkeley Chaddock completed the run from the Red Ball Garage to the Portofino Hotel in as little as 27 hours and 25 minutes. That's an average speed of 103 miles per hour. They beat the record in their specially modified 2015 Mercedes-Benz E63 AMG, which had been tuned to make, 700 horsepower and an exterior modified to make it look like a very nondescript silver Honda Accord sedan. That's my favorite. Just to compare, Cannonball Baker completed the first ever cross-country trip in 11 days and 7 hours. And that was in 1915. Barely 100 years later, we are now measuring the period of time you can cross the continent in a time barely longer than the length of a full day.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah. Racing for the record is still a dream of a fair number of people around the world. As Mr. Regular once said, California is the finish line of the world. Well, completing the record today takes thousands of dollars invested into defenses to help evade police and having many spotters looking for / distracting police wherever necessary. It's still an accomplishment that resonates with people. The event transformed from an occasionally self-important political statement into a bunch of people who had one goal in mind: to drive as fast as possible and have as much fun as they can while doing it without hurting themselves or anyone else. And honestly, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's telling that Brock Yates kind of had his transformation in his beliefs from thinking it was like a honest to God protest to something that really is just about doing it for yourself, honestly.
And just having fun and being goofy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And painting cars to look like emergency vehicles.
Yeah, or like turning a Mercedes into a Honda Accord.
Yeah, I think that's so cool and so creative.
And just like printing out decals, and I think it's the most amazing part is just that cars are reliable enough to drive 103 miles an hour for 27 hours in a row. That's crazy to me. Like that, they did have their problems, like a couple things broke down here and there, but that a machine can drive that fast for so long and not really blow up.
Yeah, for sure. That is really cool. All right. Well, that's the story of the Cannonball Run. I've been Nolan Sykes. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Nolan J. Sykes.
I'm James Pumphrey. You can find me on both of those at James Pumphrey. Joe, you have a new...
And I'm Joe Weber.
Yeah.
I got a new handle on Twitter and Instagram. It's Joe G. Weber because there are so many Joe Webers already. Yeah, it's working out for me so far. I got a lot of people in my comments saying what happened to dark webinar. I think I moved on from that phase, and this is my new brand.
Right.
Yeah, I love it.
Of course, you can follow Donut across all social media at Donut Media. All right, I love you.
Yeah, have a
Wink, wink.
Be kind. See you. Thanks for listening. Oh man, on my day off.
God, cannonball right through my house on my day off.
Now I gotta go Home Depot.
Now I got a freaking chores to do. Got to fix the damn hole in my house.
The producer goes over the house and like offers them like $250.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are also welcome to any craft